Florida State needs to score big with 2026 quarterback recruiting, and it looks like Landon Duckworth is the guy. But the Noles still have to beat out multiple SEC teams to get the job done.
You are Locked On Seminoles, your daily podcast on the Florida State Seminoles. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back into Locked On Seminoles. I am your host, Brian Smith, longtime college football recruiting analyst and writer. Thank you for making Locked On Seminoles your first listen each and every day. Truly appreciate you stopping in to talk some Noles with me. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, you can win $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Join FanDuel.com. Recruiting for Florida State is picking up. I was just at Under Armour, saw Landon Duckworth, arguably the most important recruit on the board for the Florida State Seminoles. Going to talk about his recruitment, what I saw from him, and why there are a myriad of SEC issues potentially, or possibly the other way around, that could help with the Noles to get him. We're going to talk about that today. We're also going to discuss a lot of the official visits that the Noles have, or offensive line. Thank the Lord. Florida State needs that from the high school ranks. I know I talk about this a lot. The Noles need high school recruiting to go well, and that's important. And throughout this entire venture, NIL. Florida State's spending on NIL is really acute for this scenario with quarterback and how it impacts the rest of the 26 class. So that will be intertwined throughout this podcast. First off, though, let's get into Duckworth, who he is, the background, just so you get a reminder. If you haven't heard about him, here is the 101. Jackson High School, Mobile, Alabama, 6'3", 6'4", really, really athletic. No doubt about it. He fits Gus Malzahn's offense. Anything that Norvell has done in the past, he would be a great fit for just about any program, really. He can throw it from the pocket, still working out some kinks with his mechanics like anybody else that's a junior in high school. He's far from perfect, but he throws a nice ball and he can make plays on the run. And he's just one of those guys you can't teach the measurables with him. The arm strength, the length, the change of direction, all of the attributes that Duckworth has just made him an elite recruit. ESPN even has him the number one recruit overall for the quarterback position. I don't have him ranked that high, but it places things in perspective. As far as his rankings in general, we can discuss those. And I'll share my screen for those of you that are on YouTube, and I'll discuss everything about it for those of you that are on Spotify, Apple, anybody else that you might be listening. Here we go. Landon Duckworth, again, number one player at the quarterback position on ESPN. That's a big say. There's several other guys that it could be, and different people like different things for quarterbacks. So this is a little subjective, but On3 doesn't like him near as much. They got him 28th, and I think they're out of their mind for having him there, but whatever. 24/7, fifth quarterback, Rivals number 6. I think that's those two I think I'm in line with the most. He is a 4-star by everybody other than On3, which has him at 3-star. Again, way too low. He's the number 25 player overall by Rivals. That's verge of being a 5-star. What I saw yesterday is not enough. The Under Armour event, it's not a gauge for quarterbacks near as much as the Elite 11. And I'll go see him play at one of the events this summer. I'll see him somewhere, whether it's 7-on-7, Elite 11, or somewhere else. But Duckworth is an elite football player when it comes to one thing, making plays with his feet. That is undisputed. So again, it depends on what you want from a quarterback, but his arm strength is there and all that. As for what he showed yesterday and then talked about recruiting, Duckworth is a guy that's been tied to Florida State for quite a while. Ole Miss, probably a place he's going to visit. Georgia, remember that name, is a really unique scenario with him. There's a couple of crossovers, as there is with South Carolina, where he was originally committed. But the Noles have a couple of really big advantages with him. First off, Gus Malzahn, he had him almost committed when he was at UCF. He's also just familiar with him in general, and obviously the offense fits because Gus likes to use a quarterback that is very mobile. Where it gets really interesting, and this could go for or against the Noles, are the other teams that they're recruiting against. Ole Miss, they were always in on several quarterbacks because, like him or not, Lane Kiffin can recruit, and he's really good with quarterbacks. We'll see how that goes. Jared Curtis is arguably the best quarterback in the country, Both South Carolina and Georgia have an official visit lined up with Jared Curtis. So one of them might have a commitment from him before Duckworth even decides. Who knows? But one of them could come off the board. Finally, playing time. These SEC schools, by and large, have more depth at quarterback than Florida State does right now. So even though they're competing against them, the Noles have the edge on the depth chart. So there are some advantages to going against SEC programs. Like, again, it wouldn't shock me if Lane Kiffin found a quarterback that he really wanted and was just done with this cycle, what have you. It's really, really unique player to player. Now, as for the official visits, and this is where it gets really, really unique. Florida State or anybody else for that matter, I don't know if there's an order they want to get it done. Do they want him to come in first? Is it better for Florida State to host the last OV for Landon Duckworth in like late June? These are the things that I've always went back and forth on. I want the first or the last is kind of the industry standard, but I'm not sure on this one. Lane Kiffin getting a visit before you is dangerous with a quarterback. That I'd be a little bit nervous about if that was the case. Do I think he's going to find a way to make it all the way through this cycle, get into the fall? No, I think he'll commit this summer because there's only so many spots on the board, and coaches, quarterback coaches in particular, really want to have their quarterback in the fold. So if they miss on the guy they really want, there's something to fall back on. It's just math. Florida State's not going to be any different. My prediction is twofold. Duckworth will make a decision by early June at the latest. And secondarily, I think it will be either Florida State or one of those three SEC schools based on if they didn't get somebody else early. Like, I think a few of them would take somebody else. Like, again, Jared Curtis, he's a kid out of Nashville. Georgia would take him over anybody else. That's top of the board for them. Big, powerful arm. He's mobile, but he's a little more of a pocket guy. He fits their offense pretty darn well. South Carolina, I mean, they had Duckworth committed, so we know they would take him. And then you got Ole Miss, a school that, honestly, I don't expect them to ever have problems as long as Lane Kiffin is in town to get a quarterback. Any one of them could be done first. If Duckworth decides on his visits and it gets all of his order lined out, it'll be interesting to see if he can figure out how he wants to do it and if he's steadfast. A lot of these visits, I don't put a lot of stock in them in terms of what they're projecting early on because, quite frankly, that can change at a heartbeat. Duckworth doesn't have any of his visits lined up to my knowledge right now, but even if he did, we're in the month of February. Those lists can change. As for what's going on with him in regards to how he could help Florida State overall, if anybody's curious, yes, quarterback recruiting matters to other players. You have to be able to line up your official visits with other kids around it. You want these guys to be around Duckworth or whatever quarterback it would be in any given class to help build the class overall. If you get a QB early, other kids know where the program is going. This is, again, why QB coaches, head coaches, coordinators, they want the quarterback early in the class, if at all possible. Here's the other thing for Florida State. Let's just call it what it is. The quarterback depth chart is nowhere near set beyond this year because you're going to lose Thomas Castellanos. It's just his senior year. It's a one and done. Wide open next year. Is one of the best bets in college football is that Florida State has a quarterback in 2026 that's not currently on the roster. You could argue that they might go to the portal. They might not. They might get lucky enough to get Duckworth because, if they do and they earn out, they'd still only have three guys on campus. But, I mean, Sperry, he's only a freshman now. You don't know what you're getting with him. Florida State's in flux. There's a chance to sell playing time. Maybe Duckworth is that guy that wants to take on that challenge and get over the hump and be a starter in Tallahassee sooner than later because he thinks he can get it done. I don't know. But that would be a kid that, again, Malzahn knows, he has a lot of faith in, and having a relationship like that helps. When we come back, we're going to talk about Florida State's official visits a little bit, but about 90% of this is about O-line recruiting. Hint, Florida State is doing well, and that is a great sign for the future of the Seminoles. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on it than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. FanDuel, it's a place where you can place live bets throughout the game. So even if you miss the opening tip-off and you want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, it's up to you on how you do it and when. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same game parlay. I like using FanDuel's live betting feature because I can get my money in about 15 minutes afterwards, getting paid immediately. Well, that's always a good deal no matter what you're doing. Right now, FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. If you're a Florida State fan, you are well past ready for the Seminoles to be a high-level high school offensive line recruiting team, meaning going after, signing, developing, and watching them play at a high level. It has been forever. Florida State's O-line recruiting has stunk far too often in the last 5 to 8 years. Have a good class, then have a bad one. There's been a couple of times where it didn't work out at all on multiple classes in a row, and that kind of put Florida State in the position that it was in this past year. When you rely on the portal, you rely on the Russian roulette theory of let's hope this works. That's not the way this goes through. As a reminder, if you look at the top programs in college football, the vast majority of them, Michigan, Notre Dame, Ohio State, Penn State, Texas, Alabama, Georgia, what do they have in common? Their high school O-line recruiting is elite. Those are 7 of the programs that are dominant in college football. It's not a coincidence. Just the Final 4 teams. Notre Dame, Ohio State, Penn State, and Texas, they had almost exclusively high school players that they had recruited out of the offensive linemen, elite ranks that started for them. There was like 1 or 2 guys that were transfers on any of those 4 teams starting in the Final 4. Florida State must, if it wants to ascend to the top, develop its own players. O-line is a unit. It takes longer to develop, and the Seminoles have failed at that until recently. But that is changing, massively so. And again, when credit is due, I will gladly tip my cap. Florida State has done that of late. The Seminoles have at least 5. They probably have more, but they have 5 guys that I have found out that they're going to officially have on campus for visits that are really good players. And one of the things I really like, they're getting some Georgia kids on campus. O-line play in Georgia is really good. If I'm going to have a state in this country, I'm just picking one state for O-line, and Georgia would probably be it. You could argue Texas, but I would take one of those 2 states. If it's either, I'm good with it. Florida State is doing well there. So let's dive in a little bit on what Florida State's got going on. A guy that I'm just now beginning to learn about, but he's from a program that's really important, Buford High School, one of the best programs in the country. They put kids in the NFL. They've got guys starting at Georgia and different places around the country. 6'5", 300-plus pounds. He's going to make an official visit to Florida State. His name is Graham Houston again. Interior offensive lineman, most likely. Florida State's run game last year was an abysmal, embarrassing scenario. Getting kids like this, especially from Buford, they're going to be physically ready to come in and play a little earlier at that program. Their weight program, multiple practice fields, beautiful stadium. That program breeds football year-round. It's a special place. If Florida State continues to get guys from places like that, they're doing well. Graham Houston's a player to remember. Brandon Anderson, he was a kid at the Under Armour event over the weekend that I saw. A massive kid, needs to change his body some, needs to lose a little weight, but he's out of North Cobb, just outside of Atlanta. Power player. He's another guy that can play on the inside. He's got the elite of the elite coming after him, Florida schools, Georgia schools, etc. He will have his pick of the litter. Florida State has him on campus for an OB this spring. Unfortunately, a kid that got hurt in his state title game, Psyche Helton, or the playoffs. Psyche Helton, 6'2", 280 pounds, out of Carrollton. It's the same place, ironically, where the Under Armour event was held this weekend that I went to. He is a guy that can play center or guard possibly, but he's coming off injury. He didn't get to compete. That sucks for him. He's taking an OB to Florida State. So not 1, not 2, but 3 guys in a row from Georgia, from prominent programs in Georgia, have OBs lined up with the Noles. If you take nothing else away from this part of the show, Note that Florida State is making inroads in key programs in the Peach State. That will never, ever go out of style. Got to have players from there. Bowden made a living off of it, and there's really no reason to break success of being a top 5 program like he did. He killed it in Georgia. He beat UGA for kids they wanted for years. Then it turned into decades, and he's one of the reasons that Georgia didn't get over the hump. They had a lot of great teams, but there was a player too short. It's because Florida State went in there and stole their lunch money in the Peach State and took players away. When Florida State went down, who went up? Georgia. Watch out for Florida State-Georgia battles moving forward. Also, and this one shocked me. I didn't realize this until I was just kind of going through. Maybe the best interior offensive lineman in the country. Arguable, but you can make your own judgment on it if you go watch film on Huddle. Lamar Brown out of University Lab in Baton Rouge. He's coming to Florida State on June 6th. Elite of elite lists. A&M, LSU, Bama, Georgia, Florida State. Those are his visits. I mean, that's about as high profile as it gets. Now, until otherwise proven, I believe he's going to LSU. He's at University Lab. And the institution he goes to is literally connected to the LSU campus. And I'm not exaggerating. So that is going to be a tough pull, but some of those kids leave. One of Notre Dame's linebackers is from that school. It's possible. You never know. Also, Johnny Jones is coming in that same weekend, the kid from Berkeley Prep. I've talked about him here on this show. 6'7", over 300 pounds. Now, I think he needs more time. I think he won't be ready till his 3rd year of college, but 6'7", over 300 pounds, long arms and legs, plays at Berkeley Prep, elite high school in terms of just the academic curriculum and the social outfit they have there is just incredible. Dominic Sayo, head coach, longtime mentor at that program, does a great job. I think that Florida State has 5 guys lined up, and again, there are probably more. They're going to help elevate the program. They're going to get somebody out of that list, maybe multiple. They're getting kids from the right programs to come to visit, and they need O-line. I'm going to go 5 in this class would be preferred by me. But if they just got 4 and they were all good, top Florida and Georgia kids, we're down. Obviously, if you add Lamar Brown, it shocked me. I won't say no to that either, and Florida State fans shouldn't think otherwise. I do believe that Florida State still needs to get that one wow guy. Maybe it's Brown that can come in and play early to make it cool for Florida State to be an O-line school. They're going to have to be an O-line, D-line school based on how they're recruiting. They got to finish it now. They want to be a trench team on both sides of the line. We'll talk a little more D-line recruiting over the next few weeks. But this is how you do it. You get the kids on campus. They got 5 visits. That's really important. When we come back, we're going to talk about how Florida State uses its NIL so far and a few things they're going to have to do to make this work. At quarterback, O-line, I think those are the top 2, and still balancing it. The new position of general manager in college football is really, really hard. We're going to discuss it and give a few options for you to make your own opinions and share your thoughts on the Locked On Seminoles YouTube page or wherever you want. This is a lot of fun for me, and I hope you want to participate. That is next here on Locked On Seminoles. If you were the GM of the Florida State Seminoles, would you spend the majority of your NIL on any one position? Would you look at it from a broader perspective? Or maybe there's a combination. This is one of the toughest questions that every major college football program discusses in some capacity daily. Where do we put our money? Are we going to match an offer if a kid's trying to get poached away? It happens at every school. Let's not kid ourselves. If somebody's being poached, are we going to match? These are tough questions. It's not quite as concrete as the NFL. Well, here's the salary cap. You think certain guys are going to donate and certain totals will be met, or maybe they aren't, maybe by a certain time, maybe they're not. It is complex. So you've got to find a way to be consistent while not watching any one position on your roster take a dip. So when you're playing games, the other team can pick on that spot, not only beating you up there, but mitigating your talent at other positions. The general manager spot is arguably as, if not more important than the head coach now because of NIL. This is a discussion probably we're going to have in some capacity for a very long time. So with that, quarterback is the easy pick. And especially as I noted earlier in this show today, Landon Duckworth is the guy they probably want at quarterback. They could get Keyshawn Henderson. They'd be thrilled. He's the kid out of Texas I've talked about. But Duckworth is more likely because he's from Mobile. He's got a familiarity with Gus Malzahn. He's a fit. Even if Gus wasn't in town, they have a fit with Norvell as well. That's the most likely guy. It's still not going to be cheap. No way. I mean, Rivals thinks he might end up being a 5-star guy. It's possible. We'll see. But I think more likely the biggest thing with him is just finding a fit. If he's comfortable where he goes, I've seen him play live now, there's a chance that kid could be really special. But how do you compensate him up front, especially if he's going to be sitting on the bench? This is something I had a conversation with somebody else about the other day. It's one thing to pay a quarterback to come to your institution. It's quite another to have him come and sit. This is where it gets real touchy. On3 had a stat the other day that the transfer portal has helped push the quarterback transfer number from a prospective top 10 quarterbacks, like the elite guys, up to 60% over the last 4 years or so. That's nuts. It's always hovered in that 45 to 50% range for decades. But going up to 60, it's really tough. So, in other words, if you bring in Duckworth and you bring in a portal guy, you got Duckworth making quite a bit of money. I can assure you he's not going anywhere for cheap. But if he transfers up to freshman year, you got nothing. This is hard. So would you go all in on a portal quarterback? And when I mean all in, big signing bonus, a lot of the money up front, or would you pass on that kid because of the fear of him leaving if he doesn't win the job by his sophomore year, which a lot of kids do? How would you do that? Comment below. I'd be curious to see what you have to say if you're on YouTube. And if you're on some other platform, you can hit me up on social media at FBScout_Florida. I think this is a fun topic. Quarterback is really touchy. If you pay more than one of them, there's a good chance you're paying a guy, then within 6 months, he's gone because he's not the starter the next year. But how do you keep consistency? How do you get guys that know the system? It is a really tough question. My second most important position for Florida State's one we talked about in the last segment, that's O-line. This is just a magnificently easy answer because they've stunk at recruiting O-line for too long. Florida State needs to get more guys in each year, no doubt, that have the ability to play early. But, after a redshirt year, I think that's fair. O-line's pretty hard to learn as a freshman. And they also need that dude. Same kind of thing as with the quarterback spot. O-line and QB are the two spots where kids typically have to wait the longest to play. But if you miss at those spots, your chances of being good long-term are all but zero. Ask Florida State last year. Those were the two weakest positions. It was quarterback and O-line. They went 2-10. So how do you keep them on the depth chart, not pay too much so you really hurt yourself in another position, and still win games? Welcome to college football and being a general manager. Sounded easy, didn't it? It's not. Paying kids what they want to pay, and we got to remember, we got third uncles, parents, high school coach, everybody's got their hand in the cookie jar. It's complex. This is not an easy thing for Malzahn or anybody in Florida State's back office to deal with either. I guarantee you, off the record, if you walked into Florida State's office, you got a chance to talk to somebody, they're like, there's always somebody looking for more money. It's putting out fires, is what one SEC coach told me. You got somebody coming to the office, it could be 3:00 in the afternoon on a Tuesday, and you got a game Saturday. They don't have any choice. They have to discuss it because if the kid walks, your game plan could go up in smoke. These are tough decisions. So it would not be easy, in my opinion, to be a GM. And I think it'd be a lot of fun, but it wouldn't be easy. So how else do you do it? Well, this is my point. D tackle, corner, and receiver. You can label them in whatever order you wish, 3, 4, and 5. But I think we're talking about Florida State here. Quarterback and O-line right now are definitely 1, 2. Whatever spot you want to go with those three, go ahead. I didn't put, for those who are curious, I didn't put linebacker as high as I have before because I think they can get transfers and develop guys at safety, et cetera. There's ways to fine tune that. You just need one big time linebacker a year and take numbers. It'll take care of itself through the portal too. It's a little easier to recruit linebacker, but they still got to get these other spots. They need a big play guy at receiver every year. It's Florida State, man. This isn't hard. I understand they're going to have to pay some for one of these guys, but whatever guy, is it Calvin Russell, the kid from Miami Northwestern? They need a player like that in this class. Let's go receiver third. Because if that includes an elite player, I'm down with it. D tackle is more about numbers. There's a lot of guys getting beat up. It's more about volume. It's always great to get an elite guy, but it's going to cost you well over $1 million. There was a program in the SEC that lost a D tackle to another program in the SEC that offered well over $1 million and lost the recruitment. Elite D tackle recruiting is emphatically expensive. Over $1 million and didn't get the kid. Yikes. Finally, corner. Now, why would I say corner? You're like, Brian, that's arguably their most consistent position over the last few years. You'd be right. But that's also why I think it's important. DB, if you look at the teams, kind of like I was talking about earlier with the O-line, Florida State needs to kind of mirror what the programs in the Final Four, Final Eight did. Those secondaries, man, there's a ton of guys going to the NFL. They're not quite as important as OT, I don't think, necessarily. Like an elite offensive tackle is just so rare, it's ridiculous. But if you can get corners and change how teams have to play against you, it changes how you put numbers in the box or don't. Keep that rolling. If you've got a chance at an elite corner, there's multiple just in the state of Florida that they're in on. Javari Flowers, I'll use him as an example. Paying him an extra $50,000, this is an example, to get him to sign instead of going to your rival Miami, which is quite possible. Absolutely. You should do that. And on top of that, if it's a kid in state, that's also an important factor. NIL has a lot of different directions. So here's my question to you. This is more for fun, but I think it's a worthwhile discussion point. If it's an elite player, but it's one from Florida, especially one that either the Gators or the Canes are going to get if you don't, would you pay a little more? I say yes. Again, comment down below if you're on YouTube. Love to hear your thoughts. But again, it is a complicated situation. So if you're ever thinking about, well, it'd be fun to be a GM at Florida State, it's more than most people would bargain for because you got people coming in the door throughout the week. You've always got recruiting discussion. You're planning for the portal. So-and-so just got hurt. We're probably going to be short. He's going to miss spring ball, etc. We got to have ready. You could be in the middle of October trying to make that push for high school recruiting. You got to start thinking about the portal more. There's always something with NIL on your roster. It is complex. Just something to think about. Thank you once again for making Locked On Seminoles your first listen each and every day. I truly appreciate you stopping in and talk some Noles with me. Thank you again also for loving recruiting like I do, because I think it's just a blast to talk about. In between now and the end of June, there's going to be a lot of recruiting discussion, also a lot of NIL with the portal. And here pretty soon, we're going to start talking about position groups and what the Noles have for spring ball too. So that'll be coming up over the next few weeks, starting to get into that a little bit. But if you would, if you haven't already, like this pod, hit that notification bell, subscribe, and share it. I'd love to get in front of more Noles fans. Everybody have a good one, and I will see you again on Tuesday.